Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 9/11 patch notes. As always, if you don't have time to watch the whole thing, I'll have timestamps in the description for you. And if you enjoy the content, be sure to like and subscribe. It's free, it's easy, just takes a couple of clicks, helps out a ton on the channel. So if you can do that, that would help out a lot. And be sure to check out the rest of the content as well. I will release tier lists for this patch, support, AD carry, and I'll probably do a jungle tier list as well. And then we stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a ton of guides on the channel, coaching videos, all sorts of content, so be sure to check all of that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. This is a pretty light patch overall. I don't think it's going to affect the metagame that much. It might, especially at the pro level, but there's not going to be a ton of huge changes. I know that they had been teasing a lot of big reworks. They've had Teemo for a long time on the on like Surrender at 20 and on the PBE. They've had Teemo. They've been teasing Wukong. They've been teasing Malphite. There's probably a couple other champions as well. I don't really like how they're doing that because they're setting the expectation that some of these reworks are going to go through in a timely fashion. And it seems like there's not really a good timeline for that. People are just kind of like guessing when they're going to release them. And I think that's really frustrating for a lot of people, especially Teemo. Teemo's been on there for like 6 patches or something testing him out. It's like, really? You've been like testing Teemo on the PBE for like, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months. It just feels like they need to do more internal testing first, and then when they're going to release it in like 1 or 2 patches, then have it out there. It feels like when you have it out for too long, it feels bad because people keep like thinking that it's going to come out soon. It sets that expectation when something's on the PBE, it's coming out soon. So that's one thing that I will say in general that they've been doing with the PBE in the last few months is putting these big overhaul reworks on there for numerous patches without a clear timeline of when the champion's actually going to get released. So anyways, okay, Akali, they are doing a refund reduction on her, particularly at later levels, and they're reducing her ratio to 6 and 5. So I'm not an Akali master. I'm not entirely sure like just how much this is going to affect her kit. Obviously, it will, like super late game scaling. She's already notoriously one of the lowest win rate champions, but she's kind of like Ryze, kind of like Azir in that she's extremely good in pro play. So she's actually the lowest win rate champion, just right over Ryze and, you know, a little bit under Azir. Those champions are just so difficult to balance overall because they're just so good in pro play when someone is like very, very good on them. I think it's cool to see Akali in pro play overall. I'm not sure if people will play her there. I think it is pretty funny that she has a 27% ban rate, even though she, you know, is the second lowest win rate champ in mid lane at least. So I don't know. I'm not an Akali expert. I think this is supposed to take down her late game sustained damage. That's what it says here that they want to do. So they're lowering her ratio, her passive. Now, the fact that she can trigger this a lot is a really big deal. So that's a lot of damage. Like usually just, you know, 0.3 bonus AD and, you know, 0.2 ability power. It doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal, but it really is on her because she gets her first item, has a lot of AP and a decent chunk of AD on it. And she's going to trigger this multiple times in a fight. So it really could be a pretty severe damage reduction. And I don't know how this energy works either. Obviously, you know, from what I assume is levels 1 to 6, you know, it's probably not going to matter that much, maybe even 1 to 11. But then once she starts losing this energy, it could be a big deal. I mean, if this means that she's going to cast 1 less Q, that's a huge drop-off in overall damage in a team fight. So I'm not sure where those like break-even points, where the threshold is. But if this does end up costing her a full spell in an all-in, then that's going to be a massive, massive drop. I will say that percentage-wise, it looks pretty rough, right? The fact that she's getting, you know, like a third less off of that. But she also gets some regeneration off of her smoke, I think. She's got a lot of different interactions here. So, yeah, her smoke gives her some extra energy as well. So, it's hard to say. I mean, when she gets really fed, like in that late game stage, she's one-shotting people a lot of time anyways. So, I just don't know her patterns that well. Obviously, it's going to drop her win rate a little bit in solo queue. I don't know if it's going to affect pro play or how much it's going to affect pro play, but You know, if you're an Akali one trick, this is going to suck for you. But if you're just part of the general population, it's probably not going to matter. Most Akalis are not that great anyways in solo queue, so it's not going to change it that much. I don't think. I do hope we do get to see her summon pro play because she is really fun to watch. I think there's a lot of outplay potential with her. She's probably really fun to play for Akali people and fun to watch. So I don't know how much overall damage this is going to nerf, but I feel like it's pretty significant. So we'll see how it goes. All right, Amumu. I think they're pulling the trigger so fast on Amumu. It's like if he starts doing all right at all. I mean, Mumu's been largely irrelevant outside of like bronze and silver for 8-9 years. He's only barely peaked into relevance at higher elo thresholds, and he's now finally starting to, at least at platinum level play, he's starting to win some more games. So they are hurting his damage, so he's still going to have the CC. He's still going to have the cooldown reduction on his Q. Excuse me, it's late at night, but I want to try to get this out there. So it's tough to say, but I don't like nerfing this part of his kit because this is like the one thing that's unique about him, right? And I really like it. I really prefer that they highlight and emphasize the unique characteristics of champions and then buff the generic stuff, or like nerf the generic stuff rather, and buff the unique aspects. So this is what makes him unique, is that whenever he, damages people, they take 10% extra true damage off of magical damage sources. So this makes him fit really well into magic damage comps, right? So, double AP comps. You got an AP mid laner, you got an AP top laner, you throw an Amumu in there. That's a lot of extra damage. As long as you have a strong enough AD to support that, or if you have like a Zyra or a Brand or some kind of AP support to go with it, that is a really good sort of champion. And you're just like, you know what? There's a reason to play Amumu over other champs. And that is we're running a really heavy AP teamfight comp. Sounds good. So I would have rather that they keep that and nerf, some of his other stuff, like maybe his percentage damage on Despair, or like maybe nerf his base stats or something like that. I don't know. It just feels like Amumu's been terrible for a long time, and now he's finally like decent, and he's found a home in like a very niche comp. And they're nerfing him, so I get it. He has a really high win rate. They are nerfing Rammus as well on this patch, but I don't know. They don't seem to always nerf things according to win rate. Like, if that's true, why has Sona been like 55% for, 11 patches now since the preseason? She's been OP. She's very easy to play. She's very consistent. Like, why are they not nerfing Sona? Or like some of these other champs, like Jinx. Why not nerf Jinx? She's had a really high win rate. Or Sivir, she's had a really high win rate for a really long time. So I don't know. It feels like it's so fast. They just buffed him a while ago. So I don't know. I mean, I don't love Amumu or anything. I've been an Amumu hater for years, as people very well know on the channel, because I think he's had a really hard time fitting into metas because he can get dumpstered so much early, and it's just not worth the risk of getting shut out because you can't do anything for the first 6 levels. Right, but now he's actually kind of worth it sometimes. So we'll see. I don't think this is going to completely dumpster him, but it just hurts him doing the thing that's cool and unique about him. So we'll see. I expect him to lose maybe a percentage, maybe 2. I mean, 3% extra true damage for anyone on your team that does AoE, basically, for anyone on your team that does magic damage, is more significant than it seems, I think. Okay, Ekko. I'm not really sure what this means. I assume that his E is going to be much faster, which is annoying because he already clears so much distance with that. He doesn't have a super high win rate, I don't think. He's okay. He's an interesting champion to play. He's very difficult to deal with when he's really fed, because he has such outplay potential, such shielding, such damage. But he is cool. He does require a lot of setup, a lot of prep, pretty good skill expression for the most part. So he's a dangerous champion to buff because he has so much mobility, he can do so much damage, and he has so much effective health because of his ult. So dangerous to buff him. But this is going to help him out a little bit there with his animation. So this type of stuff could be relatively inconsequential, and it could also just completely break a champion. There's some things where they just change a little bit about their kit, and it can completely change the way the champion is played. I mean, look at like Rakan after they nerfed his W, right? They just slowed down the speed of the W near the beginning of the season, absolutely cratered him. He was terrible for a long time until they gave him some buffs a couple of patches ago, and now he's actually pretty decent again. But yeah, this type of thing where it's not like a very specific number, it's hard to judge, but I think this is probably going to be pretty good for him. So like quality of life is a very deceiving term. It makes it seem like, oh, it's just this little thing, but making him like be able to complete this animation much faster is going to help his burst out. It can be a big deal in a lot of situations. Okay, they're nerfing Galio, and sorry if I snort a little bit every now and then the last couple of days. It's just a lot of like allergies and allergens and stuff in the air. But anyways, okay, so they're nerfing Galio's damage. This is pretty significant, 30 damage off. Yeah, they're giving him an AP ratio, but AP Galio or like support Galio doesn't really get any AP. A lot of times he just gets like Redemption and like, you know, Knight's Vow, Locket. You know, you're not going to see him getting like Athenes or Ardent, or definitely not like a Ludens or anything like that. So I think this is a huge nerf to support Galio. It's way less damage, especially early on. I mean, yeah, like really late game, you know, going from 180 to 150, that's pretty bad. But early game, getting dropped from 60 all the way down to 30, that's abysmal. That's so low. I wish they would have at least scaled it over time to maybe where it was like 5 or 10 less damage early on, and then late game it was 30 less damage. But no, it's 30 right off of his level 1. So he's doing a lot less damage. And the same is true right here. Early game, way less damage. So his all-in potential is far lower. If you look at these two combined, which is what he'll do a lot of time, you know, he'll like flash taunt and then knock you up with Justice Punch. That's 50 less damage overall on that combination in the early game. So that's pretty brutal. Galio's already not great in solo queue. This might knock him out of pro a little bit more. Maybe Taric will rise up. They are very different champions. They're both kind of peeler tanks. I suspect they nerfed Tom Kitch a lot for support a couple of patches ago. So I guess the real winner is probably Braum. He'll become kind of the premier team fighting tank again. I guess maybe Alistar would come back in. Because the thing is, Galio's been competing for Alistar's spot primarily because Alistar got nerfed probably near the beginning of the season. I don't remember exactly when it was, but they knocked a lot of damage off of Alistar's empowered E or whatever. They took off like 30 or 40 damage. And we just, you know, Alistar, I guess he was still played some in pro, but his play rate and his win rate just fell off a cliff. Like, you just did not see this guy. In solo queue, he just disappeared. And in pro play, he was played far, far less. Although he is still played from time to time. And it was something similar to this. It was like one of his abilities, his all-in, early all-in. Okay, so trample damage was delayed quite a bit. Yeah. It's almost literally the same thing. They knocked 20 damage off of his 5-stack trample damage. They're knocking 50 damage off of Galio. One of his abilities are knocking 20 off, but the other part of the combo is much less. So that's even more brutal. Total base damage reduced to 80. Okay, so I guess if they sit in the entire trample, then it's very similar, where it's 20 here and 20 here. So that's 40 damage off. So this is even worse than the nerf they gave to Alistar. And it just freaking bulldozed Alistar. So we'll see. So, you know, Braum looks like the big winner here. He's dodged all of the bullets. They've nerfed Tom Kench. They nerfed Alistar. They just nerfed Galio. So we'll see. You know, maybe we'll see something like Shin show back up. Shin support. He does have sort of that global that Galio has, potentially. He does have some utility, some protection with his, I forgot what it is, his primed thing. His E, I think it is. No, maybe it's his, I don't remember what it is. The thing that puts a circle around him. Might be his W. It's been a while since I played Shin support. But maybe we see some more Shin support. He is relatively safe as well. They did buff something about Shin fairly recently, although they nerfed him a lot back in the day too. But yeah, so he builds no damage. So maybe maybe mid lane Galio. No one plays in mid anymore, but like he does get some ratios, but it's still a nerf to mid lane Galio. Basically, you have to have like at 100 ability power when you max this out W, which you're not going to max this anyways until later on. You'll max your Q first. You know, maybe it's a little bit better if you have like, you know, 200 AP or something super late game, but I think this is going to be a massive, massive nerf for Galio. I meant to look at games of League. Trying to see when he was played. Let's just say the 14th. Mid-season Invitational. Yeah, he was played quite a bit. Yeah, Tom Kench, even before the nerf, was losing a ton. Nautilus has been seeing a lot more play. Maybe we'll see more Nautilus start to take over Galio's spot a little bit. So that could shake up the pro meta. For solo queue, once again, they're probably not going to matter that much. What is his win rate? I feel like it's not great. It's probably not like gutter tier, but it's not great. Yeah, 47%. So we'll say. Okay, Gragas, they are buffing his base stats a decent amount. I don't think it's going to bring him back. It's tough because I don't fully understand why he's not being played again. I know that he was really popular for a while. They have buffed the AP stuff, so he could try like a Runic Echoes type of build instead of going for Cinderhulk. I'm sure there was some nerf that nerfed him out. I know that like way back in the day, a couple of years ago, they made it so that his ult wasn't instant anymore, because it used to be instant where you could just flat or like body slam flash into somebody and then instantly ult him back. I know they changed that, but that was like 3 years ago. He was really popular as a jungler maybe 3 or 4, no, not that long ago. Maybe like a season ago, but I don't remember what they nerfed about him. Okay, so they gave him a buff on 813. Gave him some more AP ratios. I think they nerfed like the damage reduction on his W, maybe? Now, all they gave him was buffs in Season 8. Okay, they reduced the hitbox on his body slam. Alright, well that's pretty significant. See, it's those quality of life, like small things that can like completely kill a champion. Okay, and so they increased his cooldown on explosive cast, and then they made it harder to hit the body slam. Okay, so anyways, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, maybe if tanks start coming back in, maybe he could do something. He doesn't have fantastic runes. I guess he could use something like Aftershock. He's got a really low win rate, though, overall, I think. So, I don't know. My instinct is that this isn't going to matter. Yeah, he's at like 48%. I mean, he'll probably get a little bit off of this. I just don't think it's going to matter. I think, now he does have pretty good matchups, I think, into things like Jarvan, into things like Zac, because he can stop their mobility. So, he's got some possibilities, but I just don't think it's going to matter that much. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think people are not picking him because his stats are too low. I think it's just something about like his abilities and his matchups just aren't powerful enough to compete with a lot of the other junglers. Okay, Janna. Now, this is a thing that a lot of people on my channel are probably most interested or excited about for me to talk about. I actually don't think this is going to be like that good on Janna. Now, I was kind of curious about this, but on the wiki, if we go look up this change, it says that it's only once per spell cast, not per person hit. Because I was thinking, well, what happens if you hit, like, you shield somebody, it's a team fight, and then you use your ult, you knock back 3 enemies, you would get your shield back, 60% faster. And wow, that could be a really good thing, right? Or if you hit multiple people with a tornado somehow in a fight, maybe that could be a good thing. But up to once per ability cast. So I'll have to try this out on the PvE, but I think it's once per ability cast, like it says. So if you ult and you hit 3 people, it doesn't reduce it by 60%. It's only 20%. So I just don't think there are going to be that many abuse cases with this. Also, I believe that it does not trigger off of things like Glacial Augment. That would be pretty sweet. If you could go like a Glacial Augment build with her, like GLP, you know, like freeze 5 people and get the full refund on your shield. I wish it was something like that. That would be pretty cool. But right now, only 20%, and I assume it's 20% of current. I don't know if it's 20% of max cooldown or current. I assume it's current. So that means if you have, you know, 5 seconds left on your shield, you would only get a 1 second cooldown, not a 1.2 second, like if you had the original 12 seconds as your cooldown. So I think it's not going to be as good as it seems. It's okay. Like if you, on average, if you slow somebody once whenever you're supposed to shield, you know, that's going to give you a marginal increase. Hey, thanks, Mike. I appreciate the sub. It's going to give you a marginal decrease, rather, in the cooldown, right? So the cooldown was originally 10 seconds. They just bumped it up to 12, and they give you this 20% reduction. So if you get the 20%, like you shield somebody and immediately hit somebody with like a W, you get a 1.2 20% reduction there. Or no, actually it'd be 2 point something, 2.5, 2.4, 2.4 second reduction. So you end up getting like an extra half a second reduction if you slow them immediately right after you shield while the cooldown is up. So we'll see. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. If you get 2 slows, then you start to get some benefits. So if you slow somebody with your W and you hit somebody with a tornado, then I think that would add up. But from what I understand, once again, I'm going to have to test this on the PvE. Multiple hits on the same target do not reduce it multiple times, and items and, you know, and runes and things like that do not affect this. It's only abilities. So we'll see. And the issue is, like, this damage being down, this is a massive reduction in your W harassment in the laning phase. And that's what a lot of people had been doing on Janna, is going, like, at least 3 points of W in the lane. And that's a big deal. You're losing 20 damage on that at level 5. That's a lot. That's a huge damage reduction. And it's like, yeah, the cooldown is down on it. Like, it's 1 second, so you can actually cast it more. But you're not going to be spamming this often every single time it's up, because it can get a little cost expensive in the early game. I mean, maybe, but I don't think that people are going to be leveraging that extra 1 second cooldown on this enough to justify losing all that damage. Now, you do get an extra 10 on the shield, which is nice, but they have not affected the decay on the shield. So that's like the real issue with Janna, is like after, you know, 3/4 of a second, it starts decaying a ton. And so it can get knocked off really easily. So you're very rarely getting full value on that shield. It's much, much less than the full value. So I wish they would just give it like the Lulu treatment, like the full shield applies the entire time, but it completely falls off 100% at 2.5 seconds or 3 seconds or something like that. I don't like the idea of decaying stuff, decaying shields, decaying movement speed, all of that, because it's so difficult to quantify. They don't give you the actual numbers, and even if they did, it's hard to like wrap your brain around it. It's like, okay, it's decaying like a compounding, you know, 1.2% every 100th of a second or something like that. You know, like, just make it a simple number. Like, it falls off at 3 seconds. You don't get any value at 3 seconds. Or like decaying movement speed stuff. Instead of like decays over 2 seconds, just say every half a second it loses such and such movement speed. So if it slows their movement speed by 30%, just say, you know, loses, you know, 5% of the mood speed reduction every half a second or something like that. Like, just something that's really easy to quantify and really easy to understand. Because there was something where a few patches ago where I got completely faked out by a Soraka buff, where it said, you know, they gain this huge movement speed, 30% movement speed over 5 seconds, but then they said it decays, and it turns out it decayed to like virtually nothing after like 1 second. So it's very deceptive. So I wish they would like move away from this terminology of decaying stuff and just like make it a lot more clear. Anyways, she does have a high win rate right now. Overall, I mean, maybe I need to revisit her. I've tried her a couple of times. She's okay. I don't think this is going to move the needle that much on her. Maybe it might. It's hard to say. It depends on the matchup. If it's a bad matchup, this is better for her because she's not going to be able to spam her W anyways. It's too dangerous. So if it's just kind of like the farm off and chill Janna, I think that this is going to be better. But if it's one of those like you're trying to be as aggressive as possible and completely dominate the lane against like a melee support or something, I think this is a nerf because you're going to take a huge hit on your W. But like in the mid to late game, just basically think about it as she gets a free 20% cooldown on her E, but it does have an extra 2 seconds. So it's basically neutral with some potential for positive upside in some scenarios with an extra 10 shield on a champion that already has like a 53% win rate. So that's just the best way to think of it. It's like, okay, you get 10 extra shield, probably a neutral on the new passive. Some situations could be good at the cost of losing some of your harassment in the laning phase, which realistically doesn't matter a lot of the time. I mean, in some matchups, yes, if you have a very aggressive AD carry, like you're paired with a Draven, you know, maybe, but you're paired with an Ezreal or something, you know, a little bit of extra damage on your W, it's going to, you know, it does add up over time, but realistically, you're not putting down enough harass by yourself to run them out of lane anyways as Janna, probably. So it's probably about the same. She might go up 0.5% here if it works the way that I think it works. If it's you can hit multiple targets, or if you can use something like GLP or the Frost Rune or whatever, then she might actually go up, 2% or something. We'll see. That would be a really cool build. I would like that idea of going something like GLP Ghosts on Janna and just be like the slow queen and just get all these shields everywhere all the time. That could potentially be pretty OP, but I don't think it works that way. Okay, Jayce. He's pretty bad in solo queue. I mean, unless you're like really good on him, like you're a challenger, Jayce one trick, a pro player, people just don't utilize all of the power in his kit all the time. I don't think his win rate is that oppressive. No, he's pretty far down there. A lot of the Jayces, the thing is, like, yeah, he's fine. He's like 49%. A lot of the Jayces are, you have to close out the game fast. You know, if the game takes longer than 25 minutes, you're going to lose because you have no CC. You know, for your full damage rotation, usually you have to get close. You can try to poke people out at range, but you're just going to get beaten up unless you're really far ahead by a lot of the other split pushers. You know, if you're against a Tryndamere or a Jax or an Irelia or something like that late game, you're just going to get mowed down. That's how it is with all lethality champions, because lethality champs are going to be at their best when people have low armor, and it really, you know, preys on that, right? But once people even get levels, they get more like base armor in their kit, and they're going to get more items. So squishy lethality users are almost always on the clock. You got to have momentum. You got to close out the game. And I think that's a risky proposition a lot of times in solo queue. So nerfing that down, that's a pretty big nerf. That's 35. I think that's what you max first, or 25 damage off of this. So, we'll see how it goes. I think that might nerf him down a little bit, but it'll probably be about the same in solo queue. Maybe he loses a percentage. In pro play, we'll see how it goes. It feels like unless you're one of the world-class, like top-end top players, then a lot of pros don't even play Jayce. Okay, Karthus. This is a massive nerf to Karthus. Massive. I think this is going to knock him out. I think he was already kind of on his way down. I haven't seen him a lot. See him some. Yeah, he's all right at 51%. But this is a massive, massive nerf. 50 damage off. 50 damage off his level 1 ult. Huge. One ability. Keep in mind, this hits 5 different people. And this is his entire thing. Like, this is his whole existence, is being able to snipe people out and finish kills with his ult a lot of times. In the early game, you're fishing for those extra kills. And this will hurt his snowballing significantly. Because one of the major benefits of Karthus is he can just power farm the jungle super fast and just focus on farming hardcore. You know, maybe if you see an opportunity to gank, you can sneak in there. But for the most part, you're just power farming, and then it's like somebody gets low and you try to finish them off. Boom. You get a couple of kills off of that. That can increase your, I think people are still probably going ulti hunter, presence of mind ulti hunter. But it's really important that you get those kills, that you get those conversions, because if you don't, your ulti hunter's not going to stack like it should. Your presence of mind is not going to trigger, and then you're waiting even longer to get your next ult off. And so, like, Karthus in general snowballs really hard because he doesn't just get the gold, but he also gets the resets so that he gets more ults faster, which gives him more gold, and so on and so forth. So, I guess it looks like a lot of people are going Ravenous. I see a lot of people going ulti hunter too. Either way, it's going to be tough, and he doesn't get Dark Harvest stacks off of that as easily. So yeah, it's pretty big. So not only is it 50 base damage, but it also nerfs his ratio by 10. So that's like an extra 10 in the mid game or so, because you'll have like 100 AP off of, like, you know, some runes and runic echoes and things like that. So they did buff runic echoes recently. Maybe this is trying to counteract that, but I didn't see him a ton in pro play either. I mean, he was there some, right? But it's like he wasn't even played this week out of 24 games at the midseason invitational. Like, wasn't played a single time. Was he even banned? No, not played, not banned at the midseason invitational from 513 to 519. I guess that was the last week. He was played one time and lost the week before that. He was banned twice. It's like, really? A champion that has, you know, virtually no presence, like, pretty much whatsoever? You know, like, where's his presence? Let me see. 7% presence. 7% of games. What, he won one, or he was picked once and banned twice. The entire midseason invitational, the entire tournament, he was picked once and banned twice. In solo queue, he has a 51% win rate. There are, what, like 15 or 16 champions that have a higher win rate than he does right now. Do you really need to hit him that hard? Like, he's one of the few AP junglers you can even run right now. He's like a mage. I think he's an interesting, you know, kind of pick out there. You know, he forces people to play games a different way. He fits into some interesting comps. Like, if you have double AD, he's one of the like double AD in your solo lanes. He's one of the few junglers you can pick that's AP to balance that out, to make them respect you and build some magic resist. So I think he's very, very interesting, very useful, very unique strategically right now in the jungle, because there just are not that many heavy-hitting AP champs. Like, yes, we are seeing some, you know, Amumu. Yes, we are seeing, you know, some Nunu and things like that. But that's not a big enough AP threat to make people want to build a lot of magic resist most of the time. He is big enough. So I think that's really going to shut out a lot of potential comps out there. I mean, I guess you have things like Evelyn, you know, if she gets ahead. Like, there are some out there for sure, but he was definitely one of the biggest players. And this is a massive hit. It's not even like 25 damage off or an extra 10-second cooldown or something like that. It's a huge, they took a sledgehammer to him. I mean, you would think this guy, with this kind of nerf, you would think that he had like a 70% presence with like a 60% win rate in pro. It's like, no. I don't know. So that's kind of weird to me. Okay, Master Yi. Thank God they're nerfing this champion again. This champion's just dumb. Like, I don't think, just a lot of people don't like him. I don't know. I have some friends that are like one-trick Yis. I know that all the boosters like him. But he's just very, very frustrating. I've heard a lot of pro players say they don't like him because the game just revolves around him. Like, you're just trying to get him fed and all that. I don't care about that as much. I just think that he's too versatile and his kit just does too much. I mean, he split pushes really well. He takes towers, barons, dragons really well. He kills, you know, people in team fights. He can get resets. He can 1v1 people. he is kind of weak in the early game. He can get bullied, and he is vulnerable to CC. And people always say, oh, just stack a bunch of tanks in CC. Well, sometimes that's easier said than done. You know, he can get things like a quick Silver Sash if he wants to. And the biggest thing is his Alpha Strike. Like a good Master Yi can dodge a lot of your CC with Alpha Strike. So yeah, you throw a skill shot at him or even a targeted ability at him, and he does Alpha Strike, he goes untargetable anymore. That also makes it very easy for him to do things like Tower Dive. So I think the untargetability of Alpha Strike is really annoying. I know that that's kind of like his core kit that allows him to dodge CC. That's some of the, you know, like skill expression still in his kit. I think they should just change the true damage over to just bonus AD. Like, or just bonus on hit physical damage or something to that effect. Just so that armor actually itemizes okay into him if he doesn't build Last Whisper. But the fact that he has so much true damage and he can do so much multi-hit damage off of Gensu's and his double strike, he does too much damage off of too few items. So they are getting rid of his level 1 bonus 8% attack speed. I don't know why he got that in the first place. And then he does less multiple strikes to the same target off of Alpha Strike early. So this is going to hurt that crit build that I was talking about, that it was starting to emerge where people were starting to play that a bit more. So we'll see. He's at a really high win rate right now. I think he was at like 54%. Oh, he's dropped a little bit. But I think the nerf to him is warranted because he's so ridiculous. He snowballs too hard. He's too much of a threat. He's too much of a 1v9 champion. Yeah, I think he's pretty toxic. So I'm okay with them nerfing him. Okay, Rammus. Basic attack damage does a little bit less. So 10 at all levels instead of scaling. Did they really need to nerf Rammus though? Damage per second on trimmers. That's a lot. Once again, 30 damage per second that you're knocking off of this dude? Doesn't trimmers last for like 7 seconds or something at least? It's like 240 damage off of his ult. Is he really doing that much damage? I mean, he does have a high win rate. Pretty high ban rate too, I suppose. I mean, I guess I'm okay with that. Rammus is frustrating because he is so, like, he's so good at ganking in the early game. But I don't know. I didn't feel like he was that over the top. But yeah, they're just like just jacking this guy on his damage. So we'll see. You know, he'll probably lose 1%, maybe 1.5% off of that. People probably still play him though. Warwick getting a lot of extra healing. Okay, I think that's pretty cool. Warwick is kind of someone that a lot of people have just forgotten about, but I think he's okay, I guess. He's pretty far down. I mean, I'm okay with Warwick not really being in a meta. Like, he does have some interesting abilities. You know, he can play around. Like, if you time your Q correctly, you can dodge, like, CC and knockbacks because you become, like, unstoppable when you're using your Q and your ult. Like, I think there is some interesting potential counterplay. So, yeah, I think it's okay to buff him. I mean, I guess they want him to come into the meta a bit more, and so they're nerfing Rammus and a couple of these other junglers, and they want, like, Warwick and Gragas to come back in a little bit, so. Oh, okay with that. All right, Yuumi. Okay, better indicator. Okay, easier for her to get assists. Flatten Yuumi's movement speed decay to herself and her ally she's attached to based on ability power. What? That's even more obscure. So now the amount of decay that your E gives is based on how much ability power you have. So if you have more AP, then basically they're going to move faster. Why can't they just say, like, you get more movement speed bonus instead of, like, saying you don't decay as fast? Just do like you have with Lulu or Nami or all of these other champions where you have this precedent. It's like, okay, you get a lot of AP, it helps your utility. But that's just like weird. Gains 25 plus 10% per 100 AP. Okay, so it actually says that, but it doesn't say the decay here. Although, is it just like an under the hood thing? I don't know. I don't think it's going to matter that much. Fixed a bug where the minimap wasn't working. Stats. That's actually a big deal. If you were trying to jump between people and area was not triggering, that could have been a huge deal. So that could be something that could bump her win rate up a little bit here. Okay, some bug where people could have approach velocity. Probably didn't happen that often. So this could be good. Once you start dealing with decays, it's hard to quantify. Not really sure what this is going to do. But I expect her to move up a little bit. People are starting to learn how to use her better. I have seen some good proficient Yuumi play. I might try her out a little bit more on this patch if I have a poke champion on my team. We'll see. They did give her like 15 buffs or something. It was something insane, like halfway through the patch. They gave her a lot of buffs. A lot. Maybe it wasn't quite maybe it was like 8 or something, but they gave her a ton of buffs in the middle of the patch. And people are starting to get a bit better on her. So I would expect Yuumi to start moving into like maybe 48%, 49% win rate as people get more used to playing her. So I don't think she's going to be like a tier 1 primetime OP support, but I think that she will become something that is a bit more viable. Maybe a low tier 2 or a tier 3 type of champion. We'll see. Okay, Zac. Now they are reverting Zac to where his ultimate no longer does the squish down and capture people. It just does the basically you just explode and knock everybody up and you're able to bounce around and do some extra damage and hit people. So I think this is going to be better, especially for pro play, because it's basically instant. Like the other one, when you flatten out and try to kidnap somebody, it takes 2.5 seconds before you could do that. So basically, if they had any kind of mobility move or a flash, they could get out of it. And this is going to be a lot harder to counter this. So when you fly in with your E, if you hit somebody and then immediately R, there's going to be no counterplay to that. They're going to knock you up twice, and you're going to be taking a lot of damage. So I think this is going to add a lot of consistency back to his kit. This is why they nerfed it out in the first place, is because it was very consistent. Even if you missed your E half the time, you'd still be close enough to press R and still knock people up and get disruption in there. And they're keeping the new stretching strikes as well, so that you can cause even more CC. So if you fly in now, you hit your E, then you Q, stretching strike, slam somebody together, and then ult, you'll have a huge chain amount of CC that you can do. This might make him... I know people have asked about support Zac. I know that... what's his name? Nasty was experimenting with support Zac some. I mean, we'll see. I think he has really bad matchups into things like Thresh and Janna, but if people aren't playing those, then maybe you could play him. I'd have to explore some more options, but he might be all right. He might be all right, but I think this will definitely help out Jungle Zac quite a bit. I'm not sure if this is the same amount of damage he used to have or not, but he was very popular and very strong in pro play before they changed his stuff around. Like, there was a point, I think it was maybe in Season 7, where he was, like, pick ban every single patch in Korea. Or every single game in Korea, so... For numerous patches, I think. I might be misremembering that, but I think there was a time when he was really OP. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think this is going to be net positive for Zac. I expect him to, gain at least 2% win rate off of this. Challenger recall doesn't matter probably for anyone watching this. Maybe there's a couple of people out there, Scott, who might benefit from this, but you get a special recall animation if you're Challenger. Rainbow Fluffed, if you want to buy that, still available. Whirling Death now properly decreases in damage based on how many units are hit. Okay. So Draven was doing what? Max damage? To everybody hit by the R? I'm not sure. That's kind of sketch. Titanic Hydra's on hit is no longer able to hit towers. Okay, I didn't know that was really a thing. I hadn't seen a lot of people abusing that. Maybe it matters on some champs that get that a lot. So, alright. Okay, that's some bug with Death Stance and Airy. There's very few people that would have both of those. Okay, so Shaco wasn't doing a proper amount of damage. Now he's doing more. Okay, weird interaction with Eye of the Herald and Subjugation. Okay, so probably shouldn't matter. So hopefully they will change some of this stuff. It's still kind of a pressing solo queue. This is mostly for pro play. I think a lot of pros are going to start the second split on this patch. They're taking care of that. They hit a couple of the high win rate solo queue warriors here, like Amumu, Master Yi, and Rammus. But a lot of this is for pro play. So overall, decent patch. I hope they do a couple of these reworks. I think Mord is coming very soon. Hopefully they do some of the other little mini things they've been looking at, like Teemo, Malphite, Wukong. There might have even been another one in there. So I hope those come out over the next couple of patches. But overall, pretty good. I think the game's in a good game state right now. I feel like a lot of different stuff is viable in most roles. So I guess they don't need to tinker with too many things. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the rest of the content on the channel. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day.